Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the season finale of Not Another Digital Marketing Podcast, brought to you by First Page Hong Kong and Singapore. Aaron Radcliffe, my friend, how are you doing?
Dude, the holidays are closing in. Christmas is a few days away. I'm feeling cheery.
Cheery is a good word. Cheery is a good word, especially considering the effing year that we've had, when it comes to 2020.
It's really been one for the books, hasn't it?
It really, really has. It's been one for the books, and it's been one that I would like to consign to the dustbin of history, if you will allow me the honor of doing so.
Honor given, dude. Let's leave this bitch behind.
But for those of you that are wondering what the theme is for today's episode, clearly we're going to be talking about 2020 in review, and it's not been a great year. So let's just quickly recap all the things that have happened this year, and I'm just going to read off like a bullet point list of what's been happening since January. So we had the bushfires in January. Remember that? Yeah, we had bushfires. Yeah, we had bushfires in Australia, and we thought like Australia was going to burn to the ground. But then we had an incident where World War III nearly happened, with the US and Iran going toe to toe over some. Let's not go into details about that. But we genuinely thought World War III was going to happen in January. As if January wasn't bad enough, Kobe Bryant passed away. Helicopter crashed with his daughter and I believe 7 other people as well. And then we had the continuation of, various protests all around the world that started in 2019. And then I suppose the big one, in hindsight, the big one hit in February, when the pandemic first went into, enter the public consciousness. And as if that wasn't bad enough, we had, something happened with how do I even say this in the right way? The Black Lives Matter protests started in May. Then we had everybody entering lockdown, cases going into the thousands, hundreds of thousands in many cases in many countries. And then Chadwick Boseman, Black Panther himself, passed on in August. And then we had election season in various countries. We had more democracy protests in Thailand. And gosh, I'm just reading off a litany of misery right now, am I?
Are you done yet?
No, I'm not done yet. That's the thing. I'm not done yet. We saw the end of plenty of businesses as well. Apart from thousands and thousands of ma and pa shops all around the world closing because of the pandemic. We lost Victoria's Secret. We lost Robinsons. We lost quite a few airlines. Flybe, Virgin Australia. We lost some storied clothing brands like Aldo. We lost Muji in the USA. And we lost Cirque du Soleil. Amongst all of these things. This was a rough year, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Breathe. Okay.
I'm trying. In through the nose, out through the mouth.
Oh,
yeah.
Goodness.
But Rafie, what about any good things that happened?
I got very little or nothing, man. Okay. There's one thing. I started a job at First Page, so that's been a lifesaver.
Makes two of us.
And
and
I'm looking over our show notes, and Sarah wrote here that we met her this year. So I guess we can give her that,
You know what? Now I'm just wondering, why didn't we lead the show with that?
Yeah.
Should we actually just dedicate the rest of this podcast to Sarah and how blessed we are to have a relationship with her now?
Yeah, I suppose we could have done that, but then I'm scared that that'll just make her head balloon, and she'll just.
Oh God, we don't need that. Maybe we'll save that for another podcast by itself.
Yeah, let's save that for another podcast. But don't worry, Sarah, you're mentioned and you're loved, so. It's all good. There have been a few.
You got your shout out. You got your shout out, Q-Dog.
There are a couple of things though that were good in a way. We did see a reduction in CO2 levels because of all the pandemic lockdowns and everything, right? But that actually hasn't slowed down climate change. Yes, we have reduced pollution this year. Singapore actually has little to no haze, at all, right? Which is a good thing.
We've been seeing a reduction in pollution in Hong Kong as well. It's sometimes you see remember early on with the when the pandemic was really hitting and all airlines were shut down, people from like Nepal and stuff were showing pictures of the Himalayas that they hadn't seen for 30 years based on where they were living. So, yeah, that's a good thing.
Yeah. I mean, but then it hasn't really changed. This is one thing though. Like, there's a difference between weather and climate and whatnot, right? Climate change is still happening. This is the biggest hurricane season in the U.S. on record. They actually ran out of assigned names for hurricane season and had to go with the Greek letters. Alpha, beta, epsilon, all those things. In the middle of September, which is still like hurricane season. So, climate change is still real, people. Please, do something about it if you can. All right. So we've talked about the world in general. It's, there have been some good things, there have been some bad things, but, this is a marketing podcast. What's changed in marketing in 2020? Mr. Aaron Radcliffe, what is the biggest thing that you've seen or you feel is that we should talk about first?
I mean, you asked what changed in 2020 and everything, right? I mean, we just saw the entire world get turned upside down with a pandemic, and it forced us to sort of evaluate the entire way that we live our lives, and it forced everything to evolve. And this rapid digitalization that we were heading towards as a culture, as a society, as a planet, was only expedited 10 times due to this pandemic. So when you ask what's changed, I mean, it's everything, entire industries are gone. Entire industries have now entered the limelight. So, I mean, digitalization and the exponential growth of it is just, I think it's the most important thing to highlight. Would you agree?
Yeah. When we talk about digitalization, right? Like, I think that it was something that, that early in the year, I think the marketing industry as a whole felt like this might be the what was the term that you used? Tipping point, right? That was the term that you used.
Tipping point, yeah.
Where we would see widespread adoption of online channels, where we'd see brands finally properly embracing the internet as it is, right? But then it took essentially a global catastrophe for that process to be accelerated, right? I mean, we've got e-commerce is crazy right now, right? That's huge, and we and I think we'll talk about that a little bit more later on. But like, one thing that I've noticed with this whole digitalization process is that you have brands that weren't traditionally in the online space or are not embracing online channels, actually making a huge fist of it, especially in the early stages of the lockdown, right? I can think of, Formula One, for example, right? A very traditional, glamorous sport, right? Who never really progressed beyond like using YouTube to put up clips and all that. Now they've got they've run esports on their YouTube channels. They've got live streams before every single Grand Prix. They've got like a pre and a post show that is only run on YouTube. They've got a podcast now called Paddock Pass, which is on Spotify. By the way, we're on Spotify. # follow us. Yeah. And that was like F1, like probably the most glamorous sport in the entire world, finally embracing digital, right? And
yeah, I mean, and you got to think about about F1. That's kind of like the luxury brand of sports in a lot of ways. It's like the Chanel of sports, and there's that sense of exclusivity. And that was really important to their brand, and they could have doubled down and stuck with that. And I'm glad that they didn't, because it's enabled them to sort of start a new chapter in this new world that we live in, where you need to be on all these platforms and creating different types of content to really stand a chance to survive, to get people's attention. So good on them for adapting. Premier League as well, right?
Yeah. They I think they had online tournaments, featuring their big names and their star players. Like using esports as an avenue to still bring themselves closer, to their followers. Again, the Premier League is probably the most glamorous. You call it soccer, we call it football, because you kick a ball with your foot, so it's football,
I concede, it makes more sense.
Yeah, not like what you guys call football. I mean, there's one time.
You guys?
One time.
What is that supposed to mean? Rafie's coming in hot right now. Oh my God.
Look, you have a place kicker, and that's the only time football makes sense in the American context. But
hey, my dad's from Manchester, England. I have no problem conceding the fact that soccer is a dumb name.
Association football is the other one. Right. Let's get back on track before we segue too far into this. So the Premier League, which is the most glamorous football league in the entire world, actually then started with its outreach, in terms of, giving fans a glimpse into the lives of the superstars that make up the game, in that part of the world. And, that's just two huge brands which didn't originally embrace digital, right, to this extent, seeing the pandemic give them, the impetus to do so, right?
Yeah, 100%, man. I mean, these are great examples of brands that are embracing the revolution that is upon us, and they will benefit. They'll be handsomely rewarded for this because they got to diversify. They got to embrace content. So I'm excited to see what happens with these two leagues moving forward. Would you say F1 is a league? What is it?
It's a championship. It's a sports championship. Yeah.
Championship. Got it. You're the F1 master.
Yeah, I've been following that. Since I was 6 years old, man.
But like with online engagement too, we're seeing more with than just like, F1 and Premier League. I mean, what's really cool to me, and I'm not just saying this because we podcast ourselves, bro, but like, seeing just what's happening with podcasts over the past year. Podcast yet again was one of those things where it seemed like it was the future. Actually, like the life of podcasting was interesting because when it came out, everyone was like, "This is so exciting!" And then like everyone and their mother started a podcast, and then it seemed like the value of podcasts was like down. It seemed like everyone and their mother was starting a podcast, so it was kind of like a joke, like, "Oh, you have a podcast, dude? Who doesn't have a podcast?" Yeah. But now it's turned again as to where it seems like it is the most important content platform possibly out there.
Yeah.
And it's just because of the medium and how you connect with people. How, YouTube, I would say, is probably the other most important one out there, just because of obviously the importance of video. But podcasting serves such a specific and fascinating need in how you can connect with users, and they don't need to sit there and watch the screen. They're commuting, they're working out, they're living their lives around the world, and you're in their ear the entire time. So we're seeing this explosion of podcasting, and I think there's no better way to really embrace that, or at least highlight that, than with Spotify and what they've done this year. And if I had like a winners and losers list for this year, Spotify would be really high on my winners list. Not that they necessarily exploded their company value. I mean, but the investments that they're making into their content infrastructure right now are really, really aggressive, and I think it's going to pay off tremendously in the long term. Like this year, Podbean, there was 100,000 new podcasts just started, okay? But then look at what Spotify did from an acquisition sense. So they understand the value of original content, and how original content means exclusivity, and exclusivity means more people are likely to be on your platform. Look at Netflix, when Netflix started making their own content, people thought that they were insane. Like, why is a tech company making content? And it turned out to be one of the biggest and best business decisions of the decade, because they created quality content. They put that investment in. And now Spotify is doing that. They're creating their own quality content, but they're acquiring, which is quite an interesting thing because they were aggressive this year, man. They acquired Gimlet for $230 million in January, I think. The Ringer for $200 million USD in February, I think it was. Buying out Joe Rogan for $100 million. I mean, that's over... I'm not good at math. Yeah, it's over $500 million freaking dollars right there, just in acquisitions of content to ensure exclusivity on their platform. And then, not to mention, they've also put together exclusive deals with Michelle Obama and Kim Kardashian. I was not able to find figures on how much those deals were, but if I had to guess, I'd say they weren't cheap, right?
I would reckon it ends with the word million.
Yeah. I think that's I think you're right. So I just think it's really fascinating to watch the way that the world has evolved technologically, and the way that the world has evolved just in terms of the way that we consume content. We'll talk a little bit more about TikTok a bit further in this pod. But yeah, I think that really watching what Spotify has done and their investment into content has been really interesting. It's interesting too because Spotify currently owns 25% of the podcast market in the United States versus Apple's 20%.
That's a huge number.
And Spotify has been so much more aggressive in terms of acquiring and getting original content. So I think that disparity will only increase to Spotify's favor. What do you think?
I think like okay, here's the thing. If you're talking about Apple Podcasts, you're talking about Apple, right? And Apple is a closed ecosystem, so only people who are generally, a fan of Apple would be on that platform anyway, right? And I think Spotify has a better chance of reaching more people simply because it's platform it's operating system agnostic, right? It's almost platform agnostic in some way. Like you can listen to Spotify on Windows, on Mac, on iOS, on Android, web-based, desktop, whatever, on your phone, everywhere. Whereas with Apple Podcasts, it's generally associated only with Apple platforms, right? And
100%.
that's ultimately because of the price of the hardware and everything and whatnot. Apple's market will always be smaller than that of what Spotify could potentially reach in terms of eyeballs. So I do think Spotify has the edge on this one, and they'll probably grow more than Apple's will at this point in time. But
yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Keep an eye on them too moving forward. There's rumors that they're going to start getting into video, so it'll be really interesting to see what other moves that Spotify makes. But for winners of 2020, I'd have to put them up there. I think they're doing some really interesting stuff.
A fun fact, actually, some of the podcast websites, like Podbean, which is what we're hosted on, right? They actually have a facility now available for video hosting as well on Podbean, which suggests, and Spotify is probably one of their biggest partners that Podbean works with, right? Which then suggests that Spotify might actually make that dive into video. Who knows?
I think it's a matter of inevitability. How they do it will be interesting. I'm not sure how, but in terms of like, will they? I think it's a matter of inevitability.
Yeah, because like if you open up your Spotify app when you're listening to a song nowadays, right? Some of the artists that are on Spotify actually make video part of like the background instead of just a wallpaper with like album art or something. They'll have like video playing, or they could have like their lyrics and everything. So there are some artists that are already making use of video, on Spotify right now, which then begs the question, where are they going to go with this and what's going to happen with them in the future? Super exciting, definitely.
Very exciting. And they should get involved a bit more in live streaming as well. The rumor has it as well. So, plenty to talk about with live streaming this year. You're probably more involved in like, I don't consume a lot of live streaming content. It's definitely a part of my content repertoire that needs strengthening. I don't do it very often. Are you into live streaming? You're a gamer, right?
Yeah, I'm a gamer. Look, one of the most interesting moves this year was Facebook has been trying to push into the live stream space for a while now, right? They're trying to compete with Twitch. They're trying to compete with YouTube streaming as well. And they started giving out like this verified gaming streamer badges, right, to certain partners, or certain influencers on their platform. And this has just seen an explosion of growth. Like there's a dedicated tab now, on the Facebook app for streaming. Right.
That's interesting, though. Yeah. Like I didn't know about this, and I'm not really involved in this ecosystem of gaming and live streaming. But as somebody who is, do you think that there's? Do you think? I think you're older than me, bro. Do you think though that like Facebook is cool enough for live streaming? It would seem to me like gamers and Facebook wouldn't really go hand in hand. But like I said, I have no idea what I'm talking about. Do you think that there's potential for Facebook to really like do well with this?
Here's the thing. It's not about being cool, right? I mean, Twitch was cool for a long time, and then Amazon bought it, and you would struggle to think that anything owned by Jeff Bezos can be called cool. But like, it's not
Whole
about...
Foods is cool, right?
I suppose, yeah. Shopping deals are cool, yeah. I would say that it's not about being cool. I think it's about being convenient, right?
Okay.
We're at that point where Facebook isn't just an app anymore. It's not just a network. It's a platform, right? And it's the platform that has the most number of users and the biggest possible market for these people, right? The thing is that if you want to invest time and effort into Twitch, there's a whole subculture that goes on in Twitch that that's crazy. This is something we should cover in another podcast another time.
Yeah.
But there's a whole subculture around Twitch about streaming, on that particular platform, that you have to be very aware of. You have to be very cognizant of when you're trying to make it big on that platform, right? As a streamer. But with Facebook, it's easy. It's just I'm gonna hook up my camera to record me. I'm gonna get an app like Open Broadcast Software, which is free, by the way, capture my screen, boom, hook it up to Facebook. I am done. I am a streamer. And with how Facebook prioritizes live video on its platform, any influencer or page that you follow on Facebook, if you get a notification from them, most likely it's going to be a live notification. Like they're going live right now. They're going live right now, right? And that is probably the one notification that you will see more on your phone than any other, right? So
yeah, Facebook's been, really investing heavily into the live streaming thing. I remember at first everyone was like, this is kind of weird, but now you can see why. There's definitely an increased engagement, and you can still have that content be evergreen afterwards and use that content for other things. So yeah. It's live streaming. It's only going to go up from here, I think.
Yeah, and it's like, and it's not just like Facebook that's going into the live stream game, right? Everybody is doing live streaming to some extent, especially because we all can't meet each other anymore. No such thing. Remember when hugs were a thing? Yeah. These things like bands, conferences, all these things are going online. I'm gonna mention BTS here because they to date they have the most successful online concert ever. 991,000.
I was waiting for it. I'm like, oh my god, it's 20 minutes in this podcast and Rafie hasn't mentioned BTS yet. He must be fiending.
No, Sarah's like jumping up and down in the corner. So they sold an online concert in October. Was it October or was it September? September or October, Sarah? The B concert. Do you remember?
She's like September 24th, 9 a.m. Singapore time.
But all I remember is that they had 991,000 pay-per-view buys, right? And the concert could be viewed on 2 different logins at once, so you can effectively double the number of ticket holders for that particular online concert.
That's badass, man. That's
brings
really
you
cool.
to 1.8 million, and then on top of that, that doesn't include like people who are in lockdown together, watch parties and everything.
Of course,
right? And it's super rare to have BTS fans watch a concert on their own. So even if you did the double of that, that's 3.6 million people at once watching a single online concert. That's insane.
That's madness.
Yeah, but aside from like these live streams, right? There have been social media obviously has massively grown as well in 2020 as a result of everything that's happening around us, right? But I know you want to talk about this, and I want to talk about this too. Do any of our listeners remember Vine? Do they at all? Because I do. And
any other boomers like us out there?
Yeah, boomers like us. Well, yeah. Because I mentioned Vine because there's been one social network to rule them all in 2020. And if we had that winners and losers list for 2020, right, we put Spotify in the winners column, we'd also have to put TikTok in the winners column, right? That's just...
They might take the crown, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, you want to talk about a year that a business/platform has had. I mean, TikTok went from like an obscure, like, I've heard of that, to everybody lip syncing and dancing and making their own TikTok videos. 850 million active users currently. I'm not sure what it was.
A little over a year, right?
And I mean, obviously they had an active user base before the beginning of the year, and it's interesting because you see the way that it worked, because in some strange ways, well, not strange, the pandemic has really helped certain businesses. Now, it has to be the right business. Amazon invested in their infrastructure, the logistical infrastructure, and they're reaping the rewards from that because e-commerce is obviously so popular now because of this. So it's not totally random, but there's a little bit of randomness with it, because with TikTok, right when the pandemic was happening and everybody was in on lockdown, then you just saw everyone being like that's just when TikTok soared, right? Like I just remember, especially me being from the States, it was not a thing in the States. And then overnight it became the thing in the States.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just, and right now they've just exploded, right? And I mean, there's so much content on TikTok, and it's so easily consumed, right? It's just you just go on your app, you just flick up, and just and after a while, when you've followed some accounts, their algorithm is really good at serving you the
their
content.
Algorithm is unbelievable.
Yeah.
Like, so do you use TikTok, Rafie?
Yeah, I do. I mean, my daughter got me into it.
Oh yeah.
You know, she was like, "Daddy, you've got to follow all of these funny people on TikTok, right?" And it just reminds me of Vine, and I'm like, "Oh, you know, back when I was your age, you remember Vine? Yeah.
Okay,
Back then we
boomer.
only had 6 seconds. You guys have 30. You know, like be thankful."
I think it's up to
you know,
60
but,
seconds now, isn't it?
Yeah, TikTok's up to 60 seconds now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, man, it's been really incredible to see its rise and what it says about digital marketing and just kind of where we are with content in general, as to where video is just, it's everything, you know?
Yeah.
And like, I think there's a lot of good things and bad things about TikTok. I can agree it's probably the single most addictive social media platform I've ever used. It's just, it's
Yeah.
unbelievable because, you know, so that's one of the scary sides about it. But the good side is, like you said, I mean, their algorithm is just, it's very impressive how they can serve you content that they know is going to pique your interest.
Mm-hmm.
But the other side is also what I think is amazing about TikTok is just the utter creativity of human beings. I mean,
Yeah.
you see some TikTok videos and you're like, dude, human beings are so cool.
Yeah.
I know we're not always cool, but like sometimes you see a TikTok video and you're like, dude, you're cool. Like as you're there's so much creativity on the platform. There's so much innovation. I like what TikTok has given creators in terms of like this new creative outlet. These TikTok makers are like basically film editors, you know, like with the way that they're structuring their videos and the way that they're chopping and editing things. So it's a pretty exciting platform from that perspective. And, you know, the rest of the world agrees. I mean, there are 850 million active users right now. I mean, they'll be at 1 billion pretty soon. And Instagram is currently at 1 billion. So we could be at a point where, you know, there might be a new biggest social media platform. Well, I guess not really, because Facebook will still be supreme, I think. But Facebook has lost so much of its coolness as to where it doesn't feel as prestigious as Instagram necessarily. What do you think?
Like I said, I mean, I mentioned it earlier. I think Facebook at this point is just like it's a matter of convenience rather than anything, because it's like the default choice. They're almost a utility at this point, right? It's
100%.
You know, they're as cool as your electricity supplier.
Mm-hmm.
Let's put it that way, right? You know, you need them to survive in a way, right? For many people, I mean, in our line of work, we need Facebook to survive. You know, but like, I don't think it will ever be cool ever again. It's a utility now. That's what I feel it is. Yeah.
Well said. I like that, and I 100% agree.
I mean, yeah. But you know, because of the fact that it's a utility, right, and it's going to be segueing into our next segment right now. You know, it has also become a platform for brands to like spread their messaging, right? Like any other platform out there. You know, we'll talk about Facebook specifically in a bit, right? But my segue here, we're going to talk about brand messaging, right?
Great segue. That was
how
smooth.
has that changed? Yeah, how has that changed in 2020, right? I mean, we alluded a little bit to this. Not to say, I think we dedicated almost an entire episode to it.
We alluded a lot to this,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, but like, what if we could sum it up a little bit more for people who haven't watched that episode? What do you think's changed with brand messaging?
Well, you know, I don't think a lot of things have changed, and I do think a lot of things have changed at the same time. I'm a walking contradiction, but you know, at the end of the day, the basics of marketing are still there, creating emotional connections and relationships with your users and your customers. But how we do it, I think, has evolved ever so slightly. I think that, you know, given what's happening in the entire planet, you know, talking about things like empathy and, you know, mental health and less of a hard sell and more of like storytelling seems to be paying off for brands a lot. You know, just simple ads where you're just wishing people safe, you know, or that they're doing okay. Kind of goes a long way now. And I think that's obviously a sign of the times. It's because of what's happening, but there might be long-lasting effects from this as well. You know, this sort of like empathy-based branding and messaging might be here to stay, and I love it. I hope it does.
I really hope it does too, because you know, I mean, it's one thing being served you know, an ad saying, "Hey, 20% off, get this thing now," right? But then if there was better customer service, if there was better interactions with the brand at any of the various brand touch points, you know, if there's an effort being invested in storytelling and you know, things like social justice awareness, right? I would be far more inclined to be loyal to that brand, even if they don't give me a discount every single quarter. You know what I mean? Like
100%.
If their values align with mine, and I can see them actually living those values when they're, when it comes to their content, when it comes to their outreach, or their messaging, then I'm far more likely to be a brand advocate, rather than like if they give me a discount coupon like every 3 months.
Yeah.
And I hope that continues.
Yeah, and I don't think I'm stealing this for anything that we're talking about later. Well, yeah, kind of. We were going to talk about, how brands are aligning more politically, or at least culturally, and that's another thing that we've seen this year in ways that blow previous years out of the water. I mean, back in the day, you were supposed to be politically neutral as a company. It was like an unspoken rule. Like, you wouldn't endorse political candidates. You wouldn't endorse cultural movements necessarily. It was just right down the middle. Try not to offend. Try to offend as little amount of people as possible. And now we're seeing that get turned on its freaking head, because companies are just instead of companies saying, "Hey, let's go right down the middle," they're saying, "Let's double down." Nike. Like Nike's the prime example of this. That somebody said, screw the people on the fringe. We are going to market to our base, and we are going to market exclusively to our base, and people on the fringe might like us less, but people that are in our niche, people that love our brand, are going to love us even more. And we're seeing that amplified across a lot of brands. I mean, I was just telling you, I was on Kickstarter the other night, and they still have hashtag Black Lives Matter right underneath their logo at the top of the head of the page. And remember when the Black Lives Matter movement happened, so many businesses were standing with the movement. And regardless of your political preference, we can all definitely acknowledge that this is something that's happening, where brands are more likely than ever to throw their support behind a cause that they think their supporters also support. So that's been fascinating.
It's interesting that you say, like, when what they think their supporters will support, right? I think, like, I mean, that's okay. That to me might sound a little bit cynical. It's like, okay, we're gonna do this because our supporters, or our customers, are supporters of this particular movement, right? But like, I do feel that there are some brands, and maybe I'm just, for once I'm the naive one in this, and you're the cynical one, right?
We've switched roles, little role play.
Yeah. Usually I'm the one that's all like, oh, everything's terrible. But I think in this case, I do feel that there are some brands who are sincerely stating they're nailing their colors to the mast, so to speak, right? Like, not just because they're trying to make more money off their existing customer base, but to show that they genuinely believe in these causes, right? And I think that's a good thing. Like, maybe I'm being hoodwinked, right? Maybe I'm being sold something, and I'm buying it without even have to think about it too much, right? But I do feel that there has been a reckoning this year with brands, in terms of their sincerity and their messaging. And I do believe that many brands are actually passing that particular test much better than others are. Right? Like you mentioned, Nike is a good one, right? I mean, they're still like a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate that makes everything from shoes to golf clubs to hats and everything in between, and they're raking in the cash this year, right? But at the same time, also, I do think genuinely that many of these corporations do believe in this particular message. So,
I'm not saying you're wrong, and I'm not saying that I'm not saying you're wrong. I think that there's probably an even mix. I am not going to be surprised for a second if there's some companies that just sort of evaluated, like, well, if we take this position, we can expect X amount of revenue, and if we take this position. So I'm sure that there are some companies out there that do it for profit. And, at the end of the day, a business is driven by its need for profits. So, it's not really shocking if that would be the case. But yeah, on the adverse side, I would say 100% that there are probably plenty of brands out there that aren't doing it as a marketing gimmick or as a way to, I don't know, what's the word, like coerce people or further influence people to make purchases. But I'm sure there's an even mix. I think that there's probably more pros than cons with it, though, for sure. I'll go on your side. I'm an optimist.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. But yeah, I suppose generally brands have gotten it right. But, like, I do want to point out, like, I feel, we gave Facebook, like, the benefit of the doubt earlier, talking about them as a utility, as a platform of convenience and whatnot. But I feel like they've gotten it wrong this year as well. I think they're probably like the biggest brand I think that has gotten it wrong when it comes to, say, what happened with social justice issues, like their inability to deal with things like rampant disinformation and racism, as well as they're being investigated by the FCC right now, I think. And the FTC
antitrust,
in the US,
right?
Yeah, because of trying to buy out the competition before it becomes a threat. And so they're, I don't know. Would you put them in the winners and losers column this year? Where would you put them?
I don't think Facebook, from a PR perspective, had a fantastic year. I think that as data issues and privacy issues become more and more in the limelight, and then you add the tidal wave that was the Netflix documentary, The Social Dilemma, and then you add the antitrust issues and the monopoly issues, and just Mark Zuckerberg not being a super relatable kind of dude. Like, every time he talks, I feel like he just gets like, dude, he's not,
to put it mildly, yeah.
He's what?
To put it mildly,
yeah. I'm trying to be middle of the road right now. Yeah, he's not very relatable, and it just seems like every time he has a public statement or he talks, like, he just gets torn into, man. He's been talking a lot more this year, because Facebook's under the limelight, and especially with the pressure coming down from TikTok, and then Instagram Instagram ripping off TikTok on many ways, whether it's Instagram Reels or what was it, Lasso, the failed Instagram app that was a clone of TikTok. So, I wouldn't say TikTok had a great 2020, even though from a numbers perspective...
Facebook, you mean?
What did I say?
TikTok had a great 2020.
No, I'm sorry, I meant Facebook.
You said TikTok had a
I wouldn't say
Facebook
had a great 2020 from a PR perspective, but at the end of the day, their bottom line is still crushing it. So, like, they're doing something right.
Yeah, I think we'll put them in the losers column for this year, I believe.
I won't argue with that.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that. Are you?
I'll allow it.
Okay. All right, on to the next bit. I put down a note here about things that have changed in 2020. Okay, this is a very, very, I suppose it's a very marketing term, but consumption patterns. Okay, like, how have things changed in terms of, like, how people consume or have, literally anything, right? I'll start off with the biggest and most obvious one. Food delivery apps. Like,
such a game changer, right? And it seems, I can't even remember life before food delivery apps. Like it seems like it happened and it's totally here to stay.
Mm-hmm. I think, like, for people that are socially anxious like me, they've been an absolute godsend, because, like, there are days when I just don't want to people, right? Not with you though. I look forward to peopling with you. So yeah,
thanks,
it's all
dude.
good.
Thanks.
But there are days when it's just, I cannot face other human beings, right? Mm-hmm. And it's so easy to just open up an app and get food delivered. And there've been some crazy moves in the food delivery app space. I mean, like, Deliveroo, Grab, Amazon set up their own, like, grocery infrastructure as well. NTUC Online here in Singapore, they've seen huge moves in terms of, like, building out that infrastructure, right? Like, you can buy fresh groceries off Lazada, for example, right? And that really went into overdrive this year. What's been happening stateside that you can tell us about?
From what I'm following, I'm not there. I'm not on the front lines anymore. But, same thing. It's just an exploding industry, possibly overvalued in a lot of ways, because these companies, as far as I'm aware, aren't necessarily profitable yet. They need to scale to a certain level and destroy some of the other competitors to actually get to a point where they can actually achieve profitability. But, I mean, you have, like, DoorDash. They just had their IPO last week before, and they're valued at, like, $30 billion right now. I mean, I am not a stock expert. I want a disclaimer for everybody out there. I'm just a business news enthusiast. But it seems like it's definitely an overvaluation in a lot of sense. So it's one of those industries that seems to be exploding, but might retract back a little bit. It'll be interesting to see what happens with that. What do you think?
I worry sometimes when I see these huge evaluations, because I worry that there'll be another WeWork thing going on here. Like, I mean, let's not go into it. That deserves a podcast episode on its own, right? Yeah. But like, on top of this overvaluations, there talks about like some huge mega mergers on this side of the planet, right?
Same thing in the States.
Gojek and Grab, for example, both of them offer delivery services and food and transport, so many things. You can do so many things on the Grab app. You can do so many things with Gojek. And these two are the biggest names right now in Southeast Asia. And if they were to merge, it would basically be the Time Warner of today, right? In terms of like just massive scale, right? And you'd be creating something that would probably end up propping up the economies of like the entire Southeast Asian logistics economy. It would just absolutely insane, right? So like, this is, our consumption patterns right now with delivery stuff, with things being more convenient, this convergence, I suppose, of services under certain brands or apps in this case, like, if you consider Grab a brand rather than just an app. Like, there's so many things that you could do with Grab, right? It's food, it's transport. You can hire cars. You can do delivery, door-to-door delivery. You can, you can even get movie tickets. There's loyalty programs and stuff like that. That's just on the Grab app. It's not even like, like digging into like what's happening behind the scenes with them. It's crazy, like, what's happening. And it all starts with the fact that they offer a basic convenience. In this case, food delivery or delivery services in general.
Yeah. I mean,
just nuts.
Like I said, I'm no expert, but like you, a lot of these companies, I think they're seeing what WeChat has done in China, and they eventually want to emulate something like that as to where a platform to rule them all. And something, if a Grab and a Gojek were to combine their forces and consolidate their power, that would give them a lot of opportunity to worry less about destroying. Oops, I almost knocked my phone over. Destroying each other and dominating the industry, and as opposed to just actually like growing and being more than just a food delivery app, being just like the app to rule them all, like a WeChat.
Yeah. I mean, like they've all got their own payment gateway now. You have GrabPay. WeChat has had its own payment gateway for a few years now as well. It's just like, they're doing deals directly with vendors like MasterCard and Visa right now, on the credit card side. And eventually it will just be their own thing. They won't even need MasterCard or Visa anymore if the trend line continues to
Agreed,
go
yeah.
right? Yeah. And speaking of the Grab app, did you know that you can buy, you can actually like redeem movie tickets right now on the Grab app?
No, I didn't know.
Yeah, you can. Anything that you earn, like loyalty points, whatever, on Grab, you can use that to actually get movie tickets or get discounts.
That's what I'm talking about.
Right? Which then leads us to our next segue: how consumption of entertainment and movies.
Rafie, pop quiz: if you had the option to watch a movie at home or in a movie theater, which would you pick?
Theater, my friend, every single time. But apparently we're in the minority.
I think we are. And talk about consumption habits and patterns changing. Movie theaters, they're at a tough point right now, and it's not looking good. And it seems like they may Warner Brothers may have sealed movie theaters' fate a few weeks ago.
Yeah. So for those of you that don't know what we're talking about, Warner Brothers recently announced that select movies will be released for on-demand streaming the same time that they're released in movie theaters, right? This is, of course, a pandemic-related measure in terms of like countries that have lockdowns where theaters can't open, they will release it on-demand video, right? In countries that have limited theater space, right? Because in Singapore, for example, you can't have more than 50 people in a single hall, no matter how big the hall is. They will release it on-demand video a week later, right? So they're starting this trial with Wonder Woman 1984, right? Which just came out for theatrical release last week, but by this weekend it will be available on HBO Go.
Which all and which all could just mean the death of movie theaters as we know it.
Yeah, and I worry about that because, like, streaming a movie on Netflix at home is great and all, because it's convenient, right? You can pause it whenever you want. You need to do a toilet break. You don't have to worry about smuggling in the right kind of snacks. Not
Truth.
that I do. It's great and all, but like, bruh, Like, imagine a 50-foot screen, IMAX, right? 9.2 surround sound system, dual projectors, 3D, the whole works, floor to ceiling.
Say it slower
screen.
for me.
Yeah, and it's just like there's nothing that you could do at home that could possibly replicate that, right? So it was really sad because, I went to watch Wonder Woman in the theater over the weekend, and it was great, right? And it just made me realize how much I miss doing that. But apparently, I'm in the minority. We're in the minority, and there are some people who are more than happy to have streaming here to stay. Disney, for example, released Mulan on Disney Plus at the same time that it was out in limited theaters, and they charged a huge amount of money for it, $35 US, right? For that particular movie. But it drove their streaming figures through the roof, right? It drove so many views, which shows that the appetite for home streaming is there. And I worry because I think I mentioned this before. I worked in cinema for 3 years, right? And it's something that's very close to my heart. And it's just really sad when Warner Brothers like put out that news, and I'm just really worried what's going to happen to, all, especially my friends that still work in cinema, like what's going to happen to them. I know quite a few have lost their jobs because of COVID, right? But that's, we can, I could fill an entire episode.
Maybe we should. No, don't get me wrong, dude. Like as a self-proclaimed cinephile, like, I'm addicted to movies. The inevitable death of movie theaters around the world is depressing, dude. But take that aside, from a business perspective, it really makes sense for Warner Brothers. Cut out the middleman, cut out the theaters, create higher value with your products. With HBO and which is owned by AT&T. And follow the patterns. People want to watch new releases at home. And I don't think it'll be the death of all movie theaters around the world. I think that there'll still be independent theaters that can be supported by local communities. And rumor has it Amazon might actually buy AMC and add it to like an Amazon Prime membership in the US. So if you have an Amazon Prime membership, you get to watch your Amazon Prime content like in the theater. I don't know. It's this whole like crazy thing that Amazon's trying to do. So there might be an evolution of the process, but with this announcement, and the way that people are consuming their content, not looking good for movie theaters. Yeah. I don't know. We should do an entire episode about this. It's just, let's park this up because we could talk about this for hours, and I know it. And then speaking of Amazon, actually, which segues neatly into our next note. Segment here. How has retail changed consumption patterns in retail? Well, we're on point with the segues. Oh, dude, you're crushing the segues. Have you been practicing?
Absolutely.
Or does this just come naturally to you?
I think so. Yeah. Probably in bed at night. I talk in my sleep, so yeah.
It makes perfect, dude. You are crushing the game right now.
Explains all the crazy dreams that I have.
Yeah, with e-commerce, we talked about it earlier. Amazon. I mean, their value has tripled over the past 9 months. You saw like, if you look at their stock chart, like it's like and then COVID hits, and then it just goes, woo, just like shoots right up, and. Again, it was a matter of inevitability. We were waiting for things to flip, and then the pandemic just pushed it over the edge. I don't think retail is ever going to die. I mean, I'm living in Hong Kong, and dude, I was in IKEA a week ago, and there was a billion people in there. So, retail is still alive and well. It'll still have a place for companies that can pay the rent and ensure that helps with their branding, because it's very powerful to have that option. But it's not gonna be the way that it was. It's not gonna be like the good old days where you had to go to like a J.C. Penney to buy a shirt. You ever go to J.C. Penney?
J.C. Penney's gone, right? J.C. Penney's
yeah, exactly. The good old days, you mean?
Yeah, they're gone. Yeah, damn. I mean, I know J.C. Penney, because on this side of the planet, a lot of our pop culture is American sourced. I watched Friends when it first came out, way in the 90s. So yeah. That 70s show.
Classics.
These classics. Yeah, so, I don't know. I mean, retail, e-commerce, definitely going to be the new normal. That's for sure. You know, whereas before you could argue that there was a convenience factor where it's like, oh, you know, if you wanted something right now, you'd have to go out to a store to get it, right? But with Amazon's same day delivery, you know, for select vendors and products, you know, and it's just you order it at 9 o'clock in the morning and it's at your door at like 5 p.m.
It's insane,
crazy.
man. It's absolutely, and that's just showing Amazon yet again investing in their logistical infrastructure. They know that delivery speed is everything. And then one day there's going to be like same hour delivery with like drones and stuff. Like it's coming, man.
Yeah. You know, there are some companies in Singapore. I'm not sure whether, you know, they're doing it in your side of the world, but in Singapore, Decathlon, for example, has a 2-hour delivery window for stuff that, as long as it's above $60 in value and it weighs less than 5 kilos, right? If you order whatever and you select the express delivery option, it will be sent to you.
That's
within 2
badass.
hours. That's crazy. Yeah. I mean, it's also great, you know, because like they sell lots of stuff like, you know, clothing, apparel, and stuff like that. You know, it's quite a trip ordering, you know, underwear and having it arrive in like an hour and a half.
The future's here, man.
That's an interesting
and
experience.
It's pretty sweet.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, not that I ordered $60.
Yeah, we're getting a little too
underwear,
personal now, Rafie.
but
Let's work on those transitions. Let's transition now.
All right. You know, I mentioned Decathlon as well because, like, you know, they're a sportswear brand, right? You know, and we've been seeing an explosion as well in online classes for exercising as well. I think there's a company that you mentioned before when we had a pre-show discussion.
Peloton. They are crushing the game right now. For those who don't know, Peloton basically sells. They're known as like the Apple of the fitness industry, and they sell these big old. Well, actually, they're not big. They're actually like really sleek and sexy, like these sleek and sexy bikes for at-home workouts. But it comes like a television set, and like when you buy it, it comes with all these live stream classes, and there's dozens of classes a day, and you can join the 10-minute class or the 40-minute class, and yet again, talk about just a company that properly positioned itself at the right place at the right time. They were on the up regardless, and then COVID happened, and now, you know, it's a brand to really keep an eye out on. Apple's been in looks to acquire it in some ways, you know, so a lot of people have their eye on that. But yeah, regardless, just working out from home, man, like, you know, gyms, even if the world gets back to normal, I don't know if gyms are going to ever go back to completely normal, like the numbers that they used to have. I think people are going to be very, very cautious about.
Genuine contention to make, actually, because, like, you know, the gym that I go to, right? It's a boxing gym. And the thing is that usually the lunchtime classes in this part, because we're in the CBD, we're in the Central Business District here in Singapore. So usually you'd expect the lunchtime classes to be the ones that are absolutely full, right? But they're not. You know, we've got like 3 people to a class where we can accommodate 20, right? For example, you know, and even the evening classes don't fill the quota. Right at this moment in time, and this is the CBD we're talking about. So there's like loads of people around here who love going to gyms and whatnot, right? And their numbers are not great, right? So yeah, I guess the home exercise revolution is.
I hate it though.
Right?
I miss going to the gym. I bought one of those like those rubber band things. You know what I'm talking about? Like the resistance bands. Yeah, resistance band. And it's not as fun as going to the gym.
We had leg day yesterday, so I can barely walk. It's a good thing we're doing this while I'm sitting in a chair because, you know,
leg day, best day, right?
I can barely support my own weight right now. Yeah. I suppose. Yeah. I mean, I hope that gyms survive, though. I mean, it's a good thing that they're around because, you know, especially in places like Singapore and Hong Kong where not everybody has, like, say, the space. You know, to put up an exercise bike or even the resources to do so,
100%.
Financial resources to do so. It'd be good to have like these things because I know that I don't have space where I live in my HDB. I have absolutely no space whatsoever.
Makes 2 of us, dude.
Yeah, and which actually then brings me to, you know, gonna segue for the final time, our last segment for the day. You know, since we're talking about being at home, working from home, I think. I don't know. I mean, there's so much to talk about under this particular topic, but like, which we should probably again dedicate an entire episode to it, right? But working from home this year has seen a huge explosion in terms of priorities, right? Where there's suddenly an awareness that you don't need to have your employees in the office for you to get work done, right? And who knew that treating adults like adults would result in adults behaving like adults, right? Rather than trying to micromanage people and making sure that they stay in the office or whatever. But like, how has working from home been for you? Though?
Well, I have a controversial opinion. I freaking hate working from home. I hate it. I hate it so much. I see my bed and I want to lay in it, and I'm always distracted, and I can't concentrate. And then when, like, if you do like a 10-hour day at home or an 8-hour day, like a normal person, I'm a workaholic. And then you're like, whoa, I'm done. And then you're like, oh, I'm still here though. It's like, it kind of feels like imprisoning. So I hate working from home. And we've been working mostly from the office at Hong Kong First Page. But the trend is undeniable.
Yeah.
I mean, look at Twitter. They've made it a policy that you can work from home forever. It's not even like a timestamp on it. That is just their new company policy. You can work from wherever you want, which is amazing because I would like the option to work from home. That'd be great. Work like the first half from home, take the bus to work, for the second half of the day. Like, like I said, let an adult be an adult. I know the amount of hours that I have to work. Allow me to work, let me do it on my own terms. It's a trend that's undeniable. Facebook is looking at this as well. But I do think the work from home thing is interesting because I almost get a little nervous. I almost think like that's a step that shuts us off from each other almost too much. Like, think about, how people meet each other. Like, if you're a young 24-year-old out of college, where do you meet your spouse? Where do you meet your boyfriend? Typically these things are commonly happen at the workplace, where you meet friends, and it's just like such a social experience. And I wonder how the transition into WFH, working from home, will affect relationships and, mental health as a whole. What do you think?
I think, the mental health thing is an interesting point because, I think what helps me personally deal with stress is being able to compartmentalize, right? Like, this is work, this is my workspace, this is my play space, but then when I'm working from home, because I only have space for like one desk, right? My workspace and my play space become the same thing. I'm doing work on my gaming computer, right? Which I associate with stress relief, right? But then at that same time, when I'm on that computer and I'm typing out emails or I'm writing up content briefs or, I'm proofreading, whatever, stuff like that, going through work emails, my play space is now invaded by my work stress, right? And it was very difficult when we first started working from home when I was working in a previous company, because we started work from home in like late January, early February, right? And I was essentially caged in my house for like 8 months, because we couldn't go out, circuit breaker and everything here in Singapore and stuff like that. So it was tough, right? And it got really difficult. There are some days that were really, really difficult, like super hard to get through, because, you'd wake up and there would almost be no relief from anything, because the moment you get up, you're like, oh, I gotta go check my emails now and everything. You give yourself a couple of minutes to have a cup of coffee, and then you go to your table and you're sat there. And then if you decide to give yourself some me time, like for example here at the office, I can get up, go walk around, say hi to my colleagues, and whoever is in it, because we're in a team A, team B split, right? We can't have everybody in the office at once, but I go around and say hi to everybody, check in with their projects and whatever, how they're doing, okay and whatnot, because I like that face-to-face time with my team. But then at home, if I get up and walk around, I feel guilty as hell, because like my work is right there, right? And I'm not doing it, even though I'm just like taking like just a couple of minutes to just get out, walk around, stretch my legs a bit. But I feel guilty as hell because now my workspace and my play space are the same space.
Yeah, but yet again, just like the movie theaters, we were quite very possibly in the minority here, because everybody so many people love working from home. We sound like old dudes again, like, I miss movie theaters and working from the office. But like, it's definitely not what everyone feels. A lot of people really like working from home. So I think it would be really cool to get into a position where businesses like had like you choose. Come into work if you want, work from home if you'd like. Obviously, that creates logistical complications because, commercial space isn't cheap, so if you're paying for it, you want to at least use it. So I understand from a business's perspective where they're coming from. I'm not really sure what the answer is, but I think an even mix would be ideal.
Okay. Yeah, that's true. I mean, I guess also an important part of this is the office that you're part of or the work culture that you're part of. I mean, we're lucky because we've got pretty great like work environments, right?
Yeah.
Maybe that's why we feel that way. But like, if somebody who's coming from a work culture that's maybe not as positive as the one that we're in, they might not share that view with us. And maybe if we didn't have this kind of positive work environment, we would probably also say,
that's actually a really good point. I feel like a spoiled brat right now. It's true. I do love my work environment. I know that not everybody is blessed to have a work environment that they're fond of. So yes, that does make sense.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I think, you know what, we should again explore this in a future episode because this is a really huge thing. And we need to like find time to actually like talk about it. Goodness. Well, Mr. Radcliffe, we're hitting an hour.
I think it's time to wrap it up, Rafie. Let's wrap it up.
Yeah, let's wrap it up. Okay. Basically 2020 has been effing ridiculous on so many levels. Some good things, lots of bad things. Things have really changed in the marketing landscape. I would say more, but we really
I think we've said it all, right?
This time. Yeah, I think I said it all. But you know what? Things that we're going to talk about in future episodes: social justice awareness. We're going to talk about, work from home. I think we need to explore this a little bit more. And we're gonna have a future episode where we talk about our predictions for 2021. Right, that's coming in January. We're going to be taking a break for a few weeks. So don't expect any episodes at least until the middle of January. Gotta do resource planning for the rest of the year. I know you've got a lot on your plate as well for 2021.
Keep him busy over here, man. Keep him busy.
All right. So, any last words to wrap up 2020, Mr. Aaron Radcliffe?
I hope everybody has an amazing holiday and they get to spend it with the people that you love and that you have just a really great close to the year, and get excited because next year we got a lot of awesome content coming your way.
Awesome. I am not going to add on to that because you've said it better than I have. All right. Cheers, Aaron. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. See you in 2021.
See you in 2021. Bye, guys.